So let me go back to the basics a little bit to recap for everyone who's hasn't been on the call on these webinars before. So to tell you a little bit more about Qatium. So Qatium, our mission really is to make digital water management available to all utilities, big and small. And this is not a hyperbole. This is not a we want to be that. It's really what we are at core, right? So we're developing that platform that allows small utilities to access digital water management very easily. So whether they have data or not, whether they have the needs or not, whether we're talking about financial resources or knowledge or even just the headcount in the staff, basically, but also all across the spectrum, like the largest utilities who have probably a staff that's larger than actually the population that the smallest one are managing, right? So we're talking about utilities that have like around like 5,000 employees and staff on call, and we're talking about like populations and of utilities that manages water for populations of less than 5,000 inhabitants, not customer, but inhabitants. So probably like to around 2,000-3,000 customers. And so really trying to provide a platform that can meet everyone's needs, which is not a small ask, right? And so how do we go about it really is by trying to be an easy to use water management platform. So really trying to work on all those efficiencies, like let's keep the busy work to the automation, to the AI, to the algorithms, to the platform at the end of the day, right? And so how do you get to that stage, right? And we have like three major concepts, which are digitalize, optimize, and customize. And so we build our platform really around all that. So the first one is digitalize. So I mentioned briefly that, whether you're a small utility that doesn't have a hydraulic model or doesn't have a hydraulic modeler or doesn't have staff that knows about a hydraulic model, that's okay, right? So we don't need that in order to get into Qatium. We don't need live data to get into Qatium. Obviously, those two are better, and we want to get people to get to that stage, but you can definitely start that journey of digitalization through Qatium without having either of those two. So GIS data, all this kind of information of where your assets are, what they are, and so on, in order to create that digital twin of your water network for really actionable view. What do I mean by actionable view? Again, going back to that easiness to use, to try really to provide really a view of the network and awareness, and also to be able to take decision. So that's where also optimize comes into play, right? We're talking about daily operations, any kind of network changes, that you want to make in your network. You want to test it out. You want to understand whether you actually should be contracting as a consultant, or whether you should be sending that to your modeling team, internal or external, right? So all this allows you to already have some awareness and to begin able to understand the context and what is happening in your network without leaving your desk or leaving the field, and being able to empower all those operations, whether it's flushing, whether it's water main shutdown, all the things that we talked previously in our sessions in the other webinars, right? And the last but not least is customize, right? So we're thinking about Qatium not as a product, but as a platform. So what is the difference between the two? It's really that the platform can be extendable, can be customized. So thinking that, and I'll touch on it a little bit later, that Qatium has actually a marketplace. Marketplace means that you have some sort of apps, right? So just like you might have on your phone, except that in Qatium we call them plugins. And so those plugins, which I'll show a couple later when we dive into the application, can be created by Qatium or can be created by yourselves as a user, or can be created by a third party, right? So it could be a partner, an integrator, a consultant, and so on, a casual coder, right? So for those who follow Luke Butler on LinkedIn, you've seen that he's already created a couple of plugins, which should be shortly on the on the marketplace. So without further ado, I'll just move on to the next slide. So how do we go from 0 to 1, so to speak, right? So how do we get you through that step of like being ready for Qatium and being actually ready to get some value out of Qatium, right? So the first step is really build your digital replica or digital twin of your system. So feeding the data that you have to Qatium, so usually some GIS data. If you have also a hydraulic model, so we usually recommend to combine both. If you also have some SCADA data, readings, whether it's pressure, flows, tank levels, pump statuses, valve statuses, settings. So whether it's a PRV, what is the setting of those valves? Whether it's a pump, how fast is that? What is the nominal speed? So how fast is that pump running, right, in percentage? And all those kind of information. Dump everything into Qatium, and that allows you to have that view and that awareness of your network to understand what is happening right now, but also to be able to plan your operation and see what are the possibilities and what is the impact, right? So that's where we're going to streamline daily operations. And we can do it with warnings. So it means that if you actually go the extra mile and do a live data connection, not only just drag and drop some historical data, but actually make a connection through our API, you're actually be able to set thresholds and have warnings. So really highlighting pressures that are too high, pressures that are too low, tank levels that are overflowing or that are almost empty, at the same time as any kind of flow that might be too high or too low in an area. So really trying to find those leading indicators, right? So for example, what we've been seeing is that a lot of people are trying to see and to have some KPIs or some thresholds on those flows coming out of those tanks. So before the tank actually is in a critical zone or critical level, they start having warnings about like too much flow coming out of that tank during a particular time period. So all those are really, really critical to get you to that next step and to optimize your performance with simulation and scenarios. So, and that is regardless if you have live data, to be able to understand what is happening in your network. Obviously, if you don't have that live data connection, like it will be a little bit more generic, but it still is valuable information to know how resilient is your network, what is the impact of having a new development, having like a new commercial area, a mall opening, or just a series of development, right? A series of houses. We had a customer that basically had a planned project for, I think it was 200 or 300 houses. So a completely new residential neighborhood. And so we wanted to basically get some insights as to, okay, how is that going to impact my network? Is there anything that I can do in terms of operating my network before I actually need to go up and resize my pipes and things like that? So all those kind of little insights that should be trivial to get directly as a utility, as an operator, which is really your day-to-day operations, and kind of like the question that you probably get quite often, should be answered very, very easily. And that's where we come in, right? So here today, we're going to talk about a specific use case, which is manage system pressure and visualize flows. So what does that mean? I won't bore you to death. I'll jump straight into the demo. Maybe just one thing while I'm on that slide is that we'll be looking at like how pressures is represented in Qatium. What can we see? And same thing for flows. What can we manage in terms of flow, in terms of pressure? What are the type of scenarios that we can run into Qatium? And how can we see changes and impacts on the customer, on the rest of the network, on its own level, and so on and so forth. Last word on that slide, I promise. Hopefully I'm not boring you to death. This is one use case that we're going to talk about today. If you have missed the previous one, which were water main shutdown, demand and fire flow, and flushing, please go out to the community, follow us on LinkedIn, and you'll be able to find all those videos, all those recordings of me talking and demoing and showing you really how to do that in Qatium. So what we think is the best way to do it in Qatium and so on. And also answer questions, because obviously at the end there's a Q&A, so you can see what probably your peers from other utilities from just around the corner or around the globe are asking us about those topics. So feel free to catch those. And obviously there are some more coming in, like creating real-time hydraulic model, and probably some more that we haven't shown already here in that slide that will be the surprise for next times. So stay tuned. I'm going to switch now to the demo. Very quickly, just to set the scene, and for those who haven't seen Qatium yet, here is our demo model, our favorite part of the world. Northeast Australia, just short of the Barrier Reef. Beautiful area and beautiful region to be in, full of koalas, wallabies, and you name it. Also dangerous sharks, crocodiles, and other dangerous creatures. But we'll stay on the positive here. Just showing you a little bit around the application. So we have different views. One is satellite, one is dark mode. I'm going to keep dark mode for the rest of the presentation. At the bottom, we have, obviously it's a map, as you can see. So as we'll zoom in, we'll see how the map's slightly changing, and I'll get into that with the pressures and the flow in a minute. But at the bottom, you have the timelines that you can fast forward through or play through, and it will show all the changes in pressures and flows and directly show inside that network. I'm just going to pause that. You can select a different day. So I selected today. Today was day 14th. But you can, if you have live data, and you can see here that I have warning. I've mentioned a little bit about it earlier. It will show directly in the calendar view and in the timeline. Last but not least are the plugins. So something that I mentioned also, we have a marketplace that I think it's been a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks now, that is live. So pretty young, but in there you'll be able to find plugins. So these are the plugins, the panels that you see on the right. So here we have pressure and flow, which are those two plugins. But we also have demand spike, zones, taxonomy, shutdown, flushing, and modal deviation, and some others that are not installed here in this particular session for this particular webinar. So let's dive right in. So zooming in a little bit for clarity, and you can see that as I zoom in, the hexagons, which are actually what represents the pressure inside Qatium, are changing sizes. So really trying to get you the insight at the relevant size. And you can see that if I'm hovering any kind of hexagon, I'm getting some additional information. So hexagon can be hovering multiple customer points. So customer points, which all of them have the pressure calculated by the simulation, the hydraulic simulation. And basically will be in a range of color that you can see here, between purple for lower values up to bright yellow for higher values. So here we're in a metric system, and so same thing if you were using US units, imperials, and so on. So it would be showing PSIs instead of meters, but the concept is relatively the same. I continue to zoom in just to show you the details, and you can see that as I zoom in, it gets even finer and finer grain. One more way to look at the pressure, whether it's at a high or at a lower level, is to directly click and select on the range of the pressure. So I'm just right now selecting 60 plus. So any point, any customer point that has more than 60 meters in pressure will be highlighted, and the other one will be hidden. So you can see that the hexagon are still present, so I can still have an idea of what the pressure is even outside of those locations, but I can focus in on that. So what is the interest of that? So, and we'll touch about it a little bit in a minute, is really to be able to select our point of interest. So it could be extreme pressures. And so in that case, we'll be looking at what is above 60 and what is below 20 meters, right, or 30 PSI. So we want to look at what where we could have too high a pressure and where we could have too lower pressure, and just combine in a single map. We could also just as easily just zoom into the minimum pressure and pan to that. So by selecting on that icon, and you can see here that that area has been selected, and so I can see that here is the lowest pressure in the network. Same thing for the higher pressure, just clicking on that high pressure, and I can see here that my customer point is being selected. So customer point being those blue dots those blue circles with a black dot in it. And if I'm getting confused with all those hexagons, and because I'm actually interested only in the flows, I can just as easily deactivate that layer. And so we can see that now I actually can see the flows much more appropriately, depending on the scenario that I'm trying to run and what kind of insight I'm trying to get, whether it's a flushing one, for example, where I might be more interested in understanding the direction of the water, the velocity, and so on. So flow might make more sense. And one question that we usually have concerning the flows is the animation just here to make pretty? And I think that you got that from what I just said before, but no. So the flow animation really follows the direction of the water. So it means that really in your network, your water is going to be moving in that direction, and the velocity in this pipe of the animation are trying to reflect the velocity inside of the water inside the network. And same thing as the pressure panel, I can deactivate it if I'm not interested in having anything shown up in my screen. So that's for just general awareness, understanding what is my pressure and what is my flow at a particular point in time. So we can see that we can hover or just select any kind of assets and see the information. So if I were to select a pipe, I'll be able to see also a graph of the flow. So here is the simulation for the next 24 hours. So I'm at midnight, so it's going to be the simulation for the whole day, and I have that vertical bar that tells me where I am. So here I have the flow, the velocity, and the unit loss, and the status of the pipe. But here we're going to focus mainly on the flow. Not only I have a graph, but also I have a value here. I hope you can see properly in my screen that it's not too zoomed out. But here I can see the value. This was selecting it, but you can also hover upon it. So hover is going to be just focusing on just a few metrics about that pipe. And I can do the same thing for my customer points. So if I just hover upon those customer points, I can see what is the pressure here on the top left. And if I select it, I will be able to also see what is the pressure on a graph, and also in a written format here at that particular location. And this is true for every single location. So that's really at a granular level. So we went all the way down to the very specific assets. But if we have a zone layer, which I'm going to reactivate just right now, we also can get some of those insights at the zone level. So here those zones are DMAs, right? So you can probably count them. And I think if my math is right, we have 5 of them. And so I'm just going to focus on the middle one, which is actually splitting then and feeding the north one and the south and the east one, sorry. And if I click on it, I can see that not only I have the minimum and the maximum pressure in that zone, I also have the minimum customer pressure and the maximum customer pressure. So we're actually looking at those customer points and what is the pressure at those customer points, not only within the distribution pipe up to those laterals, but actually at those locations where your customers are. So trying to get really that insights to the last mile, right? So really, what is the service level that you're providing to your customers? Because at the end of the day, it's all about the customer, all about providing clean, safe water to them. And not only that, but also make sure that they are happy, right? So customer satisfaction is something that often comes up and that we need to ensure, right? So going back to those zones. So selecting it, we can get the graphs, we can get all those details. And if we hover up on them, we won't have the graphs. So two parts of that insights. So I'm going to deactivate the zone and jump into some scenarios. So thinking about pressure management and water management, we have to think about pressure regulating valves, or the PRVs. And so what Qatium can do is basically allow you to hover and select a PRV and directly test it out, test a new pressure on that network. And so here I can say, well, what happens if my pressure is 30 meters, right? And before you ask the question, it can be dynamic. So I can go back. I can go into the future, quote unquote, or just in the past, but less further away, and change that pressure. So, and at another point in time, and I want to try for 40 meters. And as you will see directly inside the graph, it'll be that what I just did means that from midnight up to 5 a.m., we're going to simulate, we're going to test a scenario where the PRV has an output of 30 meters, and then after 40 meters, and we can select another point in time in your day and lower that pressure. So really trying to think about that non-revenue water, trying to optimize that water loss and reduce it. But obviously, while we're doing that, we're always trying to understand what is the impact on the customer. Again, customer satisfaction, making sure that we provide them water, that we provide them enough water with enough pressure. And so I can quickly filter out the pressure and trying to find any pressure below 20. So I can see that here from 6 o'clock, there's no issue. But what about before, right? So I try to reduce the pressure quite dramatically in the early hours of the day, because usually there is not much consumption. So probably there is going to be better to lower that pressure even lower than during the day and during those peaks. So right now we can see that just here in that northwest area of that DMA, the pressure actually drops for 18 customer points below 20 meters. So that can tell us that we actually need to focus to refine that pressure value, or maybe refine with that. This is really depending on your type of pressure that you're fine having in your network. But usually from past experience and talking to customer, 20 meters or 30 PSI is really the cutoff. Like, so we're trying really to have that amount of pressure at customers at all time. And like we were doing earlier, just being able to just hover on those hexagon and understand, okay, what is the pressure on that area, or again, like reactivating the zones and having actually insights at a zone level, right? So here we have the minimum pressure in the zone, and we can see that it's actually 12 meters up to 5 a.m. and jumps to 22 meters from 6. That's when we shifted the pressure from 30 to 40 meters, right? And so that's all for pressure. All things that I wanted to show you. I've talked about a PRV and setting basically the setting of the PRV to a new criteria, and being able to understand what is happening in the network. And similarly for the flows is going to be very similar. So it's going to be, except that maybe not interested in PRVs, but rather in rezoning, in operating valves and seeing where the flow is going. So here I'm going to select a valve and close it. And whilst I'm closing it, you can see that it refreshes and the flow has changed direction, right? So now the flow is not going up north and left and west, but it's actually going all the way around. So being able to have that visualization really at hand, and you can see that it's just a matter of a couple of clicks, creating a scenario, testing out theories, wandering, normal wandering actually with Qatium, because here we have all the answers just within a few clicks. And I know that I'm getting overwhelmed with the amount of information that I'm telling you. So I'll stop rambling and I'll just switch to the presentation, just to talk a little bit about the SDK, which is really the basis behind our marketplace that allows people, not only us, because we also drink our own champagne, as we like to say, that we use our own technology and what we build to actually extend, because if it needs to work for us to be able to work for others. But we invite anyone really with coding capabilities to start looking at Qatium as a platform, and to be able to build, extend, integrate. So we're thinking about integration partners, but also utilities that think that, for example, those colors from dark purple to bright yellow are not good for them, and they want from light blue to dark blue, for example. We invite them to come and build their own plugins and potentially commercialize it on our marketplace, or just to use it internally for their purpose. So that was it for me. I just wanted to open it to question. I don't know, Yara, if there's been
there's one. I'm just going to pop it up here.
I'm sorry, I can't see it because I'm sharing my screen. Do you mind reading it out for me?
Yeah, someone asked if there's a plugin for pressure management.
That is the great question. Yes. So there is a plugin that is coming through. I mentioned Luke Butler a little while back, and so this is exactly one example of plugin that he built, and so it should be on the marketplace already. And so feel free to have a look. Again, follow him to get some more news about that. But yeah, definitely pressure management, whether it's through PRV or through pumps and so on, and understanding which are the critical points in the network where you have low pressure, or whether historically in the DMA. So that is definitely something that is here, right here, right now.
Brilliant. Thanks, David. And then we had one on what else can you visualize other than flow and pressure?
Yeah. So I've shown obviously flow and pressure, and you've probably seen other plugins, maybe not too many around visualization, but we do have another one called Water Age. And so as it is called, like, it allows you to visualize water age across the network, and to be able to understand which areas your water is not renewing, and where it's getting stale and old, and where you probably need to do some flushing, renewing the water, refreshing water, and so on and so forth. So probably a good idea for one of our upcoming webinars. Please stay tuned.